And so on a primal level, we understand that part of communicating who we are and who we are not is based on how we dress ourselves. Men, really in any culture, we have used appearance to signal things like status, like mastery, courage, bravery, honor, all these other things that very much matter to us as men. Really what it does is it makes in-group or in-tribe communication easier, and then it also makes it easier to identify people who are ex-tribe. People are as resilient as you allow them to be, and they're as fragile as you force them to be. You cannot have a life free of hardship. It's going to happen.
All right. Hey, Tanner. How you doing, man? It's Jack.
I'm excited to be here, Jack.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you too. You know, we first met at the 21 convention, I think it was in Orlando. Isn't that right?
Correct. Yeah. Obviously, you know, I had heard of you. I'm sure that I had been on your radar, but it was fun to get an opportunity to actually meet face to face for the first time this year.
Oh, absolutely. And that was one of the best parts about the 21 convention was sort of not only interacting and touching base with all the attendees, but also then just meeting all the other speakers. I mean, you've definitely been on my radar, and I've seen your stuff around because guys are really promoting, you know, really like your work. And so they're promoting it. And, you know, to get a chance to sit down in person was awesome. And the thing about the 21 convention that's funny is when people ask me about it, they're like, oh, well, you know, what was the 21 convention about? And I said, well, it was about all the things, you know, that go into being a guy today. And the first subject I always lead with is, you know, we talk about fashion. People are like, what? Fashion? What do you mean fashion? I thought it was going to be all like, you know, pickup or how to work out or how to make money or whatever. But, you know, fashion's an essential part of being a self-actualized and sort of independent guy today. And so I always lead with your story.
Awesome.
And speaking of your story, you know, for people that may not know you or know your backstory, I would love to hear a little bit about how you got, you know, where you are today and sort of how you got there and what led you up to this moment right now where you're, you know, an online fashion style and masculinity expert.
Cool. So there's a couple different threads that all kind of wove together in order to make this happen. And my appearance has been something that's been on my radar for a while, especially when I was in the 4th grade. My parents put me and my siblings into a private school. We had to do like the uniforms and everything, and nobody else in our neighborhood was wearing uniforms. And so I remember getting severely picked on by my friends in church or in the neighborhood or anything. And then not only that, but then it escalated when I was at a junior high level that I was very much involved in like the BMX and the punk rock and the skate scene. So like the antithesis of like the public or the private school uniform. And I hated preppers and all this kind of stuff. And so there was this crazy dissonance for me that I had to dress one way and my identity was rooted entirely in a different aesthetic and all these other ideals and all this kind of stuff. And so very early on, I became kind of hyper aware of the need to outwardly project who you are inwardly, and that there needs to be some sort of consistency and congruency there.
Well, you know, that's something that I see happening with my teenage daughter.
Oh, okay.
You know, she's starting to sort of figure out who she is on the inside, and then she's starting to project it to the outside. And, you know, she's 13 and a half. And up until just maybe 6 or 8 months ago, she was content wearing just like a leftover elementary school participation day t-shirt, you know, to middle school.
Hey, we did our fun run. Yeah.
Right. Like she didn't even care. She's just like, it's something to put on my back. But like now I can see when she's starting to develop her own personal identity and she's starting to see how her outward appearance also sort of connects to that. So yeah, I mean, that's a very relatable story there.
Yeah. Well, especially, I mean, anybody can think back to where they were in high school, especially as a teenager, when your identity is really forming and it's something that is finally separate from your parents and your family, but it's who you are as an individual based on your peers and your friends. And high school is one of those times where everybody dresses very differently because of their identity. And there's very intentionally little overlap so that, the stoners that are different from the jocks, who are different from the mathletes, who are different from the choir kids. And they're very different aesthetics because of those very niche tribes that everybody's involved with. And so on a primal level, we understand that part of communicating who we are and who we are not is based on how we dress ourselves.
Right. Fascinating. So continue on. Tell me some more. Yeah. We're at the BMX punk rock phase.
Now, obviously, as I get a little bit older, that identity stops becoming my main and primary identity. And I was working at a bank doing loans, and it started to affect my credibility. That here's this, young early 20s kid who looks like he's, still like long moppy hair and really baggy stuff and wearing my belt sideways, trying to be different and unique this way. And it affected my ability to actually make some progress. And so I started to realize it's like, I got to dress like an adult, and is there an interesting way to be able to do this? And so I started to experiment with better suiting and things like that. Well, eventually it turned into writing a blog, especially because what I was studying at the time was broadcast journalism. I wanted to do talk radio. Honestly, if I kind of look back on it, my aspiration was to be like the young, more libertarian version of somebody like Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck, somebody who's not like old, dead conservative type guy, but I very much enjoy radio and communications and that kind of stuff. And so I had written political blogs. I got sick of, I don't know how you do it, man. I got sick of writing about political stuff and kind of the heaviness of that all the time.
Hey man, we're here talking about fashion today, aren't we?
Right? Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly the transition that I made. It's like, well, I need to keep writing. I need to keep my voice sharp. And so let's write about something else that I'm interested in, and Masculine Style, the site, started from that.
What year was that?
That was 2010, I think, 2009, 2010. And so it was just a good kind of like side hobby for a little while. And then it first turned into a job when I was having trouble finding something that was really good as far as a career. And my wife was pregnant with our oldest, with our daughter. And we both knew that we wanted her to be able to stay home full time and be a full time mom. And so I had to step up my game as far as being able to provide. And I had recognized that I was answering emails again and again and again, answering the same questions from all these readers. And so I thought, well, maybe I can turn this into a business and a side hustle. And so I started doing some very like low level kind of, now I look back at embarrassing types of coaching, very basic stuff, but it started to turn into something. And then from there, I was able to leverage that into a position with a custom suit company that I worked for them for 4 years, not only in the shop doing measurements and getting really detailed, but also overseeing their operations and being involved with design and stuff like that. So I got a lot of kind of the technical background with everything too. And then about 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years in March, that I finally made the jump to this is now full time.
That's incredible. So there's a lot of good little nuggets in there. I mean, the first one is just get started, right? It's like if you sitting around waiting for something to be perfect all the time, you're never gonna take any progress. Or
no, you got to do the action. It's the ready, fire, aim philosophy.
I'm sort of taking that approach here with the podcast. I mean, like every time I do one, I try to like improve the technical elements of it. Maybe the editing is better. Maybe the sound is better. Maybe the music intro is better. Maybe there's a cut, or who knows? Like, but the first one, I was like, just get this thing out the door.
Well, and you should be able to look back in a year and kind of cringe at what you were producing now, because that means that you took action at the right time and you started to make progress.
Right. And that's clearly what you did. And you've parlayed that into an actual real world job. And so just a curiosity, like I have gotten a few custom suits made, but not with like a tailor, like with the full measurements. Like I did it with one of these where you get in this like pod thing and it like scans your body, and then they sent it off to Thailand, and then it comes back and it's totally screwed up, and it didn't really work. It didn't really work out that well. What, just for curiosity's sake, what kind of system was the custom suits that you were doing? Was that like a tailor in shop, like live thing, or what?
So we were doing a more advanced version of made to measure, where we would use try on garments, and then we would kind of work backwards from there. So we would take full body measurements, but then we'd use these fit samples. And the big advantage for that is something that you actually experience, because if all you're doing is taking measurements, Measurements are great for getting lengths and for getting circumferences, but they can't get things like the slope of your shoulders or the angle at which your arms hang or what your posture is like, or all these other variables that are really crucial in getting a solid fit on something, and a tape measure isn't going to be able to tell you that. Whereas if you've got something that's either pre-built or you go the full like bespoke where they're actually building the garment on you in their multiple fittings, doing it multiple times, that's when you can account for all those other details.
Oh, nice. Well, no wonder it didn't really work.
Yeah, especially with a build like yours, because you've got definition and you've got based on your size and all these other variables, and so the measurements are only telling like a third of the actual story. And so yeah, it's not gonna hang on you very well. It's not gonna look as flattering as it could be when you can account for all those other details.
Right. And I was getting to the point where like the drop from my chest to my waist size was just like right at the point where like the jacket and the pants, there was just no way to tailor them. I was going to have to start doing like mix and matches or whatnot. Yep. But luckily I've gotten a little fatter since then. So problem solved. So there's like a standard drop, I guess, between, for industry standard. I don't know what it was, remember what it was, but like the way that they make it so that when you pick out a jacket, that the pants are like somewhere within the realm of tailorability. There's like a standard drop between your chest measurement and your waist measurement. And like big bodybuilders, I imagine like Alexander Cortez, he's not necessarily a bodybuilder, but he's got a pretty steep drop. I imagine he might have some problem doing something like that.
Absolutely.
But that's a good problem to have.
It is. Yeah, better than the
good problem. Right, exactly. So you parlayed your side hobby into a new job, and then you continued and evolved it into a full-time online business, and that's where you are right now, right?
Correct.
So what can you tell us a little bit about sort of like the breadth of the stuff that you're doing? Because I've got guys that listen, people that listen that are just interested in like just online commerce and online activity as well. Because we're all looking for that independence, right? We're all looking for that security. We're all looking to only be our own bosses, or have us as our own boss, and only have to serve clients, right? Because that's the way that it works. And so I think that there's people, myself, interested as well, as sort of like where have you evolved to, and what has all this effort sort of produced for you?
Cool. So I've got a couple different sources of revenue with it. The main one is I do private one-on-one coaching, and I'll work with guys. I'll run them through like a 7-step program, and depending on how much they want to spend and how much help they need from me, most of my guys end up doing it just virtually, where we do video calls and I kind of help them through. We come up with a game plan and do stuff like that together. But I do have other guys who will fly out to me, or even I'll fly out to them, and we'll go out and we'll do, I'll go through their closet with them, and then we'll go through the full program, and then I'll come out again and we'll do a day of shopping, and then I'll come out a third time and we'll do another day of shopping 6 months later or something like that. And so that's kind of the main bread and butter. And for me, that's not only the most enjoyable from obviously the financial component of it, because it's high ticket, but the biggest thing that I've learned over the years of doing this, especially, being able to kind of just geek out about the e-commerce level of it, is, man, going high ticket, just the caliber of the guys that you work with is fantastic, because they have some real skin in the game. And they also are usually at a point in their lives and in their careers where they actually have the mental capacity to be able to actually invest in making some progress. And so by bumping up from, when I first started, it was literally $25 and 10% of whatever you told me your budget was. And I would come up with like 10 items for you to go buy. I hated it because it was so mundane, and I didn't even know if the guys liked the stuff. And now it's, it's anywhere from $4,000 to $20,000 to work with me one-on-one with these guys. And the caliber that I get with them is fantastic.
Right. That must be very fulfilling. But at the same time, I mean, from what I understand, there's also like easier access points into your system, right?
Absolutely. So that's the main bread and butter, but I do have other ways to be able to get in. The most basic one is I published a book last year. And what's cool is that the book itself outlines everything.
What's the name of the book?
So the book is called The Appearance of Power. Okay. And it's kind of a 2-part thing. The first thing that it does is I go through and I demonstrate why men have always cared about the way we look, and how we use our our appearance to actually demonstrate and communicate our masculinity. So I use historic examples, and we talk about things like, I know we'll get a little bit deeper into this later, but we talk about archetypes and kind of all these different variables of how our appearance is actually really reflective of what our masculinity is, especially if we do it right. But then in the latter half of the book, I actually walk the reader through the different strategies that I take my one-on-one guys through, or even the guys in kind of my other different courses through, to be able to help them come up with an idea of what should I actually be buying, because a suit is not the best option for everybody. It may be the great option for some guys, but if you're in a blue collar environment, or you're in the tech industry or something else like that, a suit's not going to do you any good, regardless of what some fashion blogger or YouTuber is going to say that you have to have a suit in order to be stylish.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, for me, I remember suits were aspirational in the sense that when I was an entrepreneur, and I still am, but I was like full-time entrepreneur, real estate developer, and we did all this work. And I remember I put on a suit so I felt like I could fit in, so that people would take me seriously. Like when I went to the bank, or when I met with investors or city officials or whatever. And I remember that putting on a suit was like my way of displaying a level of status. But then I realized later that I went to a meeting once with this guy, and a guy who was my partner on a project, and he was older than me and more successful than me at the time. And we were sitting around at the boardroom table with like the bankers, the lawyers, the accountants, and the like construction professional types, and everybody was in a suit but him.
Okay.
Right. And I was looking at him, and he was wearing jeans and like a polo and a jean shirt. Like he didn't look good, but like he was totally relaxed and totally calm and totally cashed out, because there's like a spectrum to it. It's like you put on a suit so that you feel like you have status, so that you get accepted. But then once you're in the status, and then you get accomplished, and then you can start to peel yourself back to sort of where you were. And like the most powerful guy in the room isn't always the guy in the suit. Sometimes it's the guy wearing a pair of jeans. And that opened my eyes to like all the varying levels of signaling and the reputation and the image and the energy that you want to put out by your clothing. And so, that sort of brings us to one of the questions that I had for you right off the bat, which is like, how do you approach a new client or a new experience? Like, and what are those guys really looking for when they come to you? Because this is not just about finding the right belt to go with your shoes, right?
Right.
This is about answering a sort of a deep question for people, right?
Exactly.
Like answering an urge for them. So tell me, what do people come to you with, and how do you get them started, and how do you get them along this journey? And we're going to dig into the various elements here, because I find this stuff really fascinating.
Well, I think one of the funnest things and one of the biggest challenges for me is that even before a guy recognizes that I offer a service that he's interested in, unlike a lot of businesses where their potential clients or customers are kind of thirsty for what they're offering, I feel like the majority of my marketing is helping guys understand that this stuff even matters.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's helping them even understand that, I should be thinking about this. And then when they do start thinking about it, then it's helping them avoid a lot of the same problems, kind of the stuff that you experienced. And thankfully, a lot of guys, they do that, whether it's, when you make the transition from college into your first career, or you make some other major change in your life, you go from one industry to another and the dress code changes. Most of us have made that transition, and we kind of flounder in there for a little bit. And so we kind of recognize it's like, I don't know what to do here. This matters. I hate that this matters. It sucks. My dad didn't teach me how to do this. Nobody else is really helping me out. I'm just going to try and not embarrass myself.
Right. And that's a key, you brought up a key thing that a lot of people are facing right now, which is my dad never taught me how to do this.
Right. Especially because the thing that's so funny to me about all of this is that at any point in history, men in any culture, we have used appearance to signal things like status, like mastery, courage, bravery, honor, all these other things that very much matter to us as men, and particularly how we relate to each other as men. That's another kind of fallacy, is a lot of guys think that the only reason that they should be caring about their style is because of how women relate to it, but that's secondary. That's an easy thing to pick up on. It's how we as men relate to each other because of things like status and hierarchy and all that kind of stuff. But then the baby boomers, who ruined everything anyway, right? Part of the sexual revolution and all that rebellion. Yeah, exactly. My parents are great. They're baby boomers, and they know that I knock on that generation all the time. But one of the things that they did is they decided that as a way to reject everything about the way the world was that they were not going to care about the way that they looked. But ironically, there was a very specific aesthetic when it came to not caring about the way that you look. And so there's this false signaling of, I don't care, but I also look like everybody else who doesn't care, which really means that I do care, but the only acceptable way to care is an antipathy for style as opposed to an affinity for it or an embrace of it. And then generationally, it just gets passed down where your dad says, I don't care. I'm just wearing jeans and a polo because that's what I can get away with wearing at work because that's the most comfortable. You figure it out on your own.
Right. I one of the more memorable Seinfeld clips was him talking about how older men, they wear the same clothes that they wore the last time their life was like at its peak. And like that, it was like their best time. It was their best experience. That's how they remember their like favorite version of themselves.
Yes.
And then that's what they wear for the rest of their life.
Yeah. It's aesthetic inertia. You're trapped in this stage, and that's it. And you could see that. You could see guys who peaked in the 90s, and it's like, I'm sorry that the best stage of your life was 25 years ago. That sucks.
Man, the 90s are almost 30 years ago. Jeez. You know, I'm 42. I'm a Gen Xer for sure. I don't, you know, I'm not sure how old you are. You're probably
34. So I'm the earliest of the millennials.
Woof.
Yeah.
Man. All right. Well, you don't sound like one. That's so, no offense to my millennial people out there. You know, that's basically who I'm talking to mostly. But so, you know, you brought up an interesting thing, which is coding, like coding with your clothing. So coding when you're speaking is like, you know, adopting the vernacular and the colloquialisms of the people that you're speaking to so that you can engage with them on a way that's relatable. And, you know, working in education, we talked about like code switching all the time. It's like kids talk to each other at a certain level, and then you talk to your teacher at a certain level, and then you talk to the principal at a certain level, and you talk to like an outsider, talk to your parents, and you have to learn how to code switch. And I was just thinking about this code, this like expression of your identity when it related to the, you know, I don't know if you're specifically talking about the hippies, in you know, in the 60s,
kind of the
boomers,
illusion,
but
yeah,
but you know, the fact that I don't care, there was like the phrase that came to my mind was a coded rebellion. It was like a very specific,
that's a good way of putting it,
targeted expression of rebellion, which in and of itself is it like a totally contradictory thing.
Isn't that so fun? That's how that was the recognition I came to as being part of the punk rock culture, where it's like, we all look the same. We're all so individual with our Liberty spikes and our patches on our backpacks and our combat boots. And we all look the same. So nonconformist. We're just conforming to a counterculture.
Right. Well, I had the same thing when in the 90s, I was part of the, you know, back then we called it the rave thing. The rave scene. It was like the underground house music and underground dance music scene. And back then it was cool. I don't know if it's still cool anymore, but back then we used to like break into warehouses and do parties underneath bridges and import music from all over the world. And it was the future. I mean, it was also the past. It's like 25 years ago, but there too, we all wore the same version, like these giant baggy jeans and very colorful horizontally striped shirts and like, you know, baggy like hats and knit hats. And it was all, we were rebels when you dropped us at the mall or just going to school. But when we all got together into our tribe, we were all very much wearing the uniform.
Right.
So do you see people sort of signaling membership in a specific tribe through the way that they dress today, like in sort of as adults in like modern culture? This is not just like a subculture thing, right?
No, not at all. Especially because we don't live in a homogenized culture in the West anymore. You know, it used to be 100 years ago that the West was this hegemony and everybody wore suits when they were going to formal places, and even blue collar work all looked the same. But as society becomes more and more diverse and we become more tribalistic in how we see ourselves related to everybody else, then our clothing becomes even more that way anyway, which is why the tech industry looks different than the finance industry as far as the way that guys dress. Or you've got, I mean, even look at the gym. CrossFitters dress very differently from bodybuilders who dress very differently from powerlifters. Like, talk about really ridiculous sub tribes, but they're very distinct, exactly. But there are very distinct aesthetics separations there, so that you can signal it's like, no, I'm not one of those guys. This is the way that I like to work out.
Right, exactly. And I've been guilty of that myself. I'm a proud CrossFitter for many, many years.
I'm sorry, I have
But
to leave now. No,
but
I'm just kidding.
you didn't know that
Right.
because I'm not like those other guys. I'm
No, I've
not
done
posting.
CrossFit. It's great, but it's that
I'm
identity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day that I wore the tall socks for deadlifting. I was like, oh, these are pretty sweet. And then I found myself wearing them like on non-deadlift days.
Uh-huh.
And before you know it, I had like 3 pairs. And then I had like the compression socks. And
Yes.
I'm like, sweet. So like I'm totally in this.
Right. And then they're bright
totally.
green because that's the way you signal even more. And there's nothing, not only is there nothing wrong with it, it's a good thing to be able
Right.
to, because really what it does is it makes in group or in tribe communication easier. And then it also makes it easier to identify people who are X tribe. And we do the same thing with our etiquette. We do the same thing with our language and the jargon that we
Right.
use. It's a
Right.
natural thing, and it's a good thing.
Right. Right. That's interesting. That's interesting. So when guys come to you and they want your help, like I know you're saying that you need to educate them in sort of awareness of all of these things, but there's got to be something that they feel like they want to have help with when they reach out to you.
Yeah. So most of the time, the pain points that they're after are usually either that they want to be able to have more confidence when they're in kind of any situation, because they maybe have their style good enough to not be embarrassing at work, but they suck everywhere else, or they can't quite take it to the next level. So they recognize that there's this kind of glaring gap. The other thing that I get is a lot of guys are kind of the way that I am too. And I think obviously, the way that I market or you attract people who are like you is they're kind of self-optimization minded, where they're interested in
Right.
becoming the best versions of themselves. And what's
Right.
fun is with these guys, it's more of an internal thing. With other guys, it's just, I want to be able to navigate social situations better, whether that's with women or at work or anything else like that. But with these other guys, they recognize it's like, okay, I got my finances dialed in. I've got my fitness dialed in. I'm good on my relationships. But the guy who stares back at me in the mirror looks like the same guy that he has for the last 20 years. And I'm not seeing visual evidence of the fact that I'm actually better than I was. And so it's this kind of nagging feeling. And it's coupled with the idea that they have no idea how to do it. And so they finally recognize that of all the things that they need to adjust, this is a glaring gap. And it's one that needs to be brought up to par with everything else.
Right. It's interesting the way you framed it too. It's not so much that they feel like it's hurting them. Maybe, I mean, maybe it is, right? Because there's obvious benefits to getting this dialed in, but it's really about self-actualization, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really about becoming the person that you want to be. And I love the term that you use, the self-optimizing. I've been using the phrase auto-regulating.
Cool.
Like that's sort of the hallmark, I think, of our sort of online community and the guys that we know from 21 and sort of the dudes that we roll with online. Like, I think that's pretty much the unifying factor. It's this
Right.
like self-optimizing, auto-regulating, sort of independent male in America today. And you have to also become a self-teacher and then seek out people that are experts in your field.
Right.
And one thing I wanted to circle back on and sort of open this up a little bit more broadly is you mentioned that guys dress for other guys.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you said?
Yep.
And it made me think of women, right? I think women also dress for other women too.
Oh,
so
man.
this is a
Way
universal
more than
sort
other
of thing.
men. Yeah.
Right.
Way more than other men.
Right. So, I mean, it's a matter of being attractive to everybody, but at the same time, it's like you're communicating to your intrasexual competitors, whether they're male competitors or you're female and you're a female competitor. So,
right.
so it's sort of like
Both competitors and collaborators.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because we're
Yeah.
in a tribe and it's not all it's competitive internally, right?
Right.
So, I wanted to bring that up because I want people to understand that this is not necessarily just a guy thing, right? You've taken the perspective because of who you are and who you want to serve of focusing on masculine identities and masculine power through your appearance. But every human being sort of does some version of this, whether they're old or young or male or female, and the dynamics are all sort of kind of the same. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. So I see really huge evidence of that in my community, being in Salt Lake City, Utah, and being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Most people know us as Mormons. One of the things that's really popular here as far as like social media is the mommy blogger, where, we've got these girls out here who have these Instagram followings in the millions or, the high hundreds of thousands. And I mean, obviously with like the thoughts and the fitness chicks, they're trolling for thirsty dudes, and that's the bulk of where their audience comes from. But with these mommy bloggers, it's not a bunch of dudes who are really interested in this latest Pinterest thing or where's that cute outfit that you got her. It's all status signaling amongst the women, and they're
Right.
buying the latest outfits and they're being as cute as they are. Yeah, it's great that the men benefit from it, but for the most part, I don't care if what my wife is wearing is on trend today, as long as it's attractive, and attractive has this whole
Right.
spectrum. But
Right.
as far as that kind of signaling, that's very much done between women, and that's how they gauge each other.
Right. So this reminded me of a conversation that I've had in the past about status and signaling, and sort of the opposite of a positive signal is a negative signal, and that negative signal is often sort of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in the old days of Danger and Play, like years ago, Mike
Yeah, I remember
Cernovich,
those old days.
there was he did a whole series of things on overcoming shame and overcoming status. And at the time it seemed really relevant and something that was useful to a lot of people, which was forget about shame, forget about status, just do what you want to do. Now that's a certain conversation that we can have about like whether or not you're going to spend $10,000 on a watch just to show off. Right. And that's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
We're not talking about muting shame. We're not talking about overcoming like shame. What we're talking about is presenting the image that you have in your mind's eye and in your heart, and like who you are as a person and what your story is, and expressing that through your appearance. This is not about like, I have the, not to dog on women, but it's not, I have the fancy new bag, right? This is about my total package presentation and the expression of male archetypes. And so let's move on to that one, because that's next on my list here, which is what, your book, you went into detail in terms of the expression of masculine archetypes and identities. It's also in one of your courses that I have gone through. So can you talk to me, maybe you mentioned a few earlier in terms of expression of experience and who we are, but can you talk about a few of the different male archetypes that you see commonly, and that sort of guys, my demographic of people that I reach is like basically like 25 to 45, mostly men, but there's a lot of women, that can relate to that sort of thing. So what are some of the more common ones, and how do you see them manifested?
So the way that I've broken it down, both within the book, within the courses, and it's actually even something for you listeners, once we're done, if you want to go learn about which of these three archetypes is most applicable to you, it's actually a free quiz that you can do on my site. So you can just go to masculine-style.com and you can take the archetype quiz. The three archetypes, as far as the way that they're broken down, especially related to aesthetics, are rugged, refined, and rakish. And I think before we even dive in and I explain what those three are, one of the things that's so crucial to understand about this is, one, it's who you are internally. It's not necessarily this is who I'm supposed to be, but it's who you actually are in the way that you interact with the world. And then two, the other thing that's important to understand is that you may be primarily within one, but you will have elements of all three, and you actually may even shift which one is primary, which one is secondary, based on the different stage that you're in your life. And so with that kind of as a background, I'll tell you what the three are. So rugged is you interact with the world physically. You are much more interested in and engaged with the world in a physical way. And so that may be a blue collar worker. That may be somebody who's into camping and the outdoors and kind of adventure stuff. You're somebody who tries to involve yourself with the physical world as much as possible. The second is refined, and this is for men who are more interested in the world as far as how we interact with each other socially, and especially when it comes to status and hierarchy, shame and aspiration, all those other things. But it's guys who not only enjoy the game, but they're good at the game. They're rule followers. They like embracing that kind of stuff. And for them, kind of peak self-actualization is trying to climb that ladder as high as they can and being able to affect as much change as they can through that. And then the third one is rakish. And these are the guys who, they understand all those hierarchies just as well as the refined guys, but rather than embracing them, they thrive in going against those rules. So like your last guest, Goldman, very good example of both a rakish and a rugged combination because of how he interacts with other people and how he interacts with the world physically, his love of nature, how much he's an adventurer, that kind of stuff. And so a good combination of those. And every one of us has a combination of all three within there. And when you can find out what that is and be able to incorporate different manifestations of what those archetypes are into your style, then not only do you become visually interesting in a way that it's not just like, dad jeans and a polo shirt, because that doesn't communicate anything, but you also feel super authentic and self-actualized in what you're wearing. Because what a lot of men struggle with, especially as they start off with some stylish chick at Nordstrom who's 22 and says, you're going to look handsome in this, is they put it on and it feels like a costume. And yes, it may aesthetically look better, or it may signal a certain thing of status, but it doesn't feel congruent with who they are. But when you start with those archetypes and your understanding of where you fit within them, then you can create a sense of style that not only looks awesome, but it feels like, okay, I finally am able to actually express who I am. It's like learning a language when all you've been able to do before is kind of give grunts.
Right. Well, as you're talking about this, it got me thinking about writing and voice, and being congruent with who you are, what you're talking about, and the words that you're using to do that. And what comes out of having a congruent voice is clarity.
Yes.
And so clarity in your writing doesn't mean, it definitely means the opposite of like using fancy words, using, trying to just find that, although I'm guilty of it sometimes, trying to find that exact right 4-syllable word that captures the essence of everything you want to say here. It's about clarity. It's about so that when the words come off the page, they just flow right into the other person's brain and they just have an understanding of who you are and what you're talking about. And as you're describing this congruence with your outward appearance with who you are and what your experiences have been, to me that was like an expression of clarity and your identity. It's not confusing for people. There's not like a conflict, right? Like you're not wearing something that tells me one story, but then when I hear you speak, you're telling me another story.
It's like Marty McFly in Back to the Future 3 is the example I always go back to, when he wears all the cowboy stuff and it's like, this is not who you are, right? Yeah, we want to avoid that. Yeah.
Right. So that clarity also then just kind of makes you more interesting, right? It's like it makes the conversation that you have with other people and their ability to digest who you are, it makes it much simpler for them.
Right. Because you're no longer just this safe neutral. It's almost like, I haven't thought about it this way before, but it's almost like most people aesthetically are NPCs too. You know what I mean? Where there's nothing interesting about them, because trying to actually engage is risky. Trying to actually communicate who you are is risky, because that means that you have to say, this is who I am, therefore this is who I'm not. There's opposition created by any sort of identity. And so most people would say, I want to avoid not looking like an idiot, so I'm just going to play it neutral and play it safe. And there's no clarity in that.
There is none. And let's just define NPC for everybody who may not know. So NPC stands for non-player character. And it comes from online gaming, where like if you're like, let's say you're playing like some sort of like Old West game and you're on horseback and you come across like a guy standing on the side of the road and you're like, hey, how you doing? And he's like, I'm great. I hear there's some Indians outside of town. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to go get those Indians. But then the next time you're like, so what'd you have for lunch? And he goes, I'm great. I hear there's some Indians outside of town, right? They only have so many things programmed into them. And so when you engage with them on anything beyond the very most simple concepts, all you get back is just this, repeated lines over and over again, like Orange Man bad, right?
Yep.
So that's a very interesting way of putting it, and it confuses your communication that we all do with our body language, with the way that we walk, with the way that you wear your hair, with the way that you just move your arms and gesture, and the way you stand, or whether you're sitting or whether you're standing, or if you're standing in the middle of the room or the corner of the room or at the front of the row or the back of the row. These are all ways that we transmit information, and your clothes are as much of that as anything. And I would argue they're really, really powerful force. Mm-hmm. So could you go a little bit deeper into Rakish? Because I think I got a really good sense of rugged. Like I feel like I could fall into the rugged category, because I'm very physical and I'm very into things and nature and exertion and such like that. But this Rakish, that one doesn't necessarily make too much sense to me. So can you
Okay,
explain that a
gotcha.
little bit?
Yeah, so the rakishness is really just based on the idea of rebellion. There's a lot
Okay.
of similarity there, and I would even argue, from the interactions that we've had, the fact that you had your nails painted when we were at 21 Con, there's an
Yes, sir.
element of rakishness in that, where it's kind of challenging people to recognize that there's a difference there, that you're going against what something is considered to be normal or abnormal, and so there's an element with that. A lot of times when guys think of rakishness, they think of like the rock stars or streetwear, the guys who are the hype beasts wearing the latest Yeezys that Kanye's dropped or something else like that. And those may be really good manifestations of it. But then the irony of the rake and the rakish archetype is, as we get into kind of a world of mediocrity in that NPC world, even just caring about your style at all in kind of a meta context does create some element of rakishness. So
Mm.
just by saying I'm willing to care about this, I'm willing to have some risk, is in and of itself a rejection of the modern direction in which culture is heading. And so there's some rakishness in that.
That's fascinating. And for people that don't know, so I did go to the 21 convention with my fingernails painted. They were shiny black with gold flecks in them, and it kind of looked like space rocks. And I had started doing that with my daughter. I took my daughter I was trying to find ways to spend some time with her.
Mhm.
And I like with my son, until I got banned from coaching Little League, I really created more time with him by like going and coaching baseball and spending time with him and the kids. And then with my daughter, it was harder because she wasn't into team sports. We got her to try soccer. She didn't like that. She tried t-ball. She was on my she was on my team for a couple seasons, but never really stuck with her. And then she got into like horseback riding and chorus and singing and stuff. And so that, I mean, I love that. I go to all of our shows and whatnot, but it's not something that we can like really do together.
Right.
So I was trying to find ways to do stuff together with her. And one of the things that we do is I'm divorced and I don't live with her full time. And so I like try to take her out on a date one night every month or two when she's like supposed to be at her mom's house. So I go over to her mom's, I pick her up, I take her out to dinner, we go for a walk, we get some ice cream, whatever, and we just have like a little date, and it's pretty awesome. And one of the other things that I started taking her to the nail salon. And first we started getting pedicures together, and that's always nice. And every dude should get a pedicure. There's no question about that.
Mhm.
And then one day, she's like, Dad, why don't you get your fingernails painted? I'm like, all right, let's give this a shot. So I got my fingernails painted, and the reaction that I got from people was so intense.
Oh yeah.
It was so intense because I'm 6'4", I'm 250 pounds, I'm built out, I've got a big beard. I walk around with a certain image, and then you see the fingernails, and they're like, whoa. And I'll tell you, like, man, girls open me up like crazy over it. Like every girl I ran into,
Because you're
like,
multidimensional. It's contrast.
yeah, yes, that's an interesting way of putting it. And it's funny, on my way, one of the last times I saw her before I went to the 21 convention, I was like, yeah, I'm probably gonna take the nail polish off before I go. And she goes, don't be a wimp, Dad.
There's that shame.
And I was like, all right, my 13-year-old daughter calling me out. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And to be perfectly honest, there was a little bit of apprehension about it. I mean, I was going to meet like 350 dudes who were all there, like all about masculinity and whatnot. And I rolled in with with like a fresh Manny.
Yeah.
And obviously it went over fine, and most everybody didn't even say anything about it. And whenever anybody did ask me about it, they said, well, what's up with the fingernails? And I just said, I like it. Yep. And they just kind of looked at me like, all right, I don't really have anything to say over that.
Right.
So that, I guess you're right, that is a little element of rakishness, but that wouldn't be my primary mode. And most people have a primary mode. So like, what do you see most commonly?
Most commonly, probably refined. Yeah,
Okay.
with rakish being a pretty close second. I don't see a ton of rugged, and I think one of the reasons for that is because most rugged guys are the ones most rooted in the idea that real men don't care how they look.
All right, let's talk about that for a second. Real men don't care about how they look. That strikes me as being total and complete horseshit.
Total. In fact, one of my favorite things to do on Twitter is post up examples of some pretty cool looking men that are. I posted one this morning. It was samurai armor that was
right.
intricately made and all the colors on it were incredible, and tell me that that dude is not a real man
Right.
because he cares about how he looks.
Right. Right. Or
Especially because
like,
most of the time when people say that, they use it as a disqualifier. You care how you look, therefore you are not a real man. Everything else about you that's good, we throw out the window because you care about your appearance. It's the ultimate disqualifier for a lot of these guys. And clearly that's not the case.
well, I think there's a little like homophobia built into that, right? Like only gay men care about how they look.
Yeah, and whether that's homophobia or just a concern of I don't want to project something that I'm not.
No, I mean like people being critical of guys that follow that pay attention to what they wear.
Right. That's what I'm saying is it's not necessarily, I don't think it's always that people have a problem with gay dudes so much as it's I don't want somebody to think that I'm gay.
Right.
So it's they're trying to avoid any sort of like false advertising.
Right.
So therefore, because I'm straight, I have to look like a bum. Otherwise, I'm advertising falsely and I'm into dudes, or I'm effeminate and I'm much more interested in being in the friend zone or doing girls' night or things like that. Ergo, real men, guys who are not interested in dudes, guys who don't want to have girl time, don't care about how they look.
I'll tell you, ever since I learned how to dress and started to take care of my appearance, I don't think there's ever been one woman that said to me, I don't know, you're just too stylish.
Yeah, right? And how much do you get
good.
approached because of it?
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's so, I mean, if you want to talk about making pickup easy, you know, and I'm happily married. I haven't had to worry, but I still get women who approach me all the time. And it's just, where'd you get those shoes? Or it's nice to see somebody wearing a cool coat or something else. It makes life so much easier in that regard.
Right. The shoes are definitely one that women notice, like right off the bat. Yeah. So this notion that men don't care about what they think is just a bunch of horse shit. And so what's missing then, right? And we see this so much in so many aspects. Like, you know, my dad never taught me how to work out. The only like exercise I ever saw my dad get would be like in fits and starts. He'd start jogging for like a week or two, and then he'd be done with that. You know, never taught me like how to handle, manage, meet, interact with, have a successful, loving relationship with another woman.
Right.
They never taught me about like how to go out there and like be an autodidact and like teach myself and like learn and like what's the way to become a expert at things. And they certainly aren't teaching you like how to express yourself with your clothing and with your appearance. And so I think that has opened up this, you know, window, this opportunity for you to really sort of fill. And that's what we're all doing, isn't it? We're all filling that missing thing that happened in our childhoods, and it's happening.
And should have done.
Right. And it's gotten even worse. Like the guys, you know, who are in their 20s, that's the main thing I hear and read all the time online. It's just like, my dad never taught me this, or no one ever taught me this. Society doesn't teach us this. So like culturally, you know, you may not have the answer to this, but like if men have always been concerned with the way they looked, and everybody is also concerned with the way you look, because don't forget that for 1 second.
They are. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Then, you know, why aren't we teaching people how to best present themselves in a way that's congruent with their personal identities?
I think it has a lot to do with a lot of the other kind of blue pill, cognitive dissonance, everything else that we deal with, where the mantra that we have is don't judge a book by its cover, or people should treat me based on who I am on the inside and not who I am on the outside. And I agree with a lot of the kind of backing behind those ideas, but it's also wishful thinking. And so we have created an entire culture that's built around wishful pie in the sky thinking and hoping that if we just have enough faith, which is ironic because we're also becoming anti-religious, but we have this faith in this utopia based on human progression, that if we're all just kind of to each other and love each other enough, somehow that's going to work. And so it's based on this idea that if we just try hard enough and we have enough faith in it, then all of a sudden everything about the way that we're wired, everything about hierarchies, everything about human history and animal history and everything else is just going to go out the window. And we're gonna treat everybody like a blank slate, and we're not gonna care about anything. Exactly. So
you said it. That's my the word
on it.
It's blank slateism, man. Yep. It's blank slateism, and isn't that ironic? Not ironic, but isn't that fascinating? Which is what most people mean when they say ironic.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating that like the blank slate concepts are so pervasive in our society, and the complete discrediting of our animal nature, of our existence in dominance and competence hierarchies, and like evolution and who we are as animals. And today, advanced animals, obviously, but still animals working in a system. We throw all that out, and it's like damaging guys all the way down to like the most basic level of how they present themselves to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Totally permeated everything.
Yeah, that's an angle that I had not necessarily considered before, which is why I'm doing these podcasts, which is awesome. So thank you very much, Tanner, for that. That's really fascinating. I remember very distinctly when I got divorced, I was coming out of that with like clothes that my ex-wife had bought for me when she was at Costco. She's like just going grocery shopping. She comes back, she's like, I got you some pants and a sweater. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
And it didn't fit me and I didn't look good. Of course, she's not going to buy me something that's going to make me look sexy and amazing and appealing to other people. And of course, my body type at the time also, was not going to be well expressed in good clothing either. And so it took me a while to figure it out. And one way that I did start to figure it out is I went to this boutique in Georgetown in DC here. And it was called Lost Boys.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And it was run by a woman, blonde woman, semi-attractive, late 20s. And her whole thing was that there's the generation of lost boys out there that don't know how to dress themselves. And so she basically built this
cool
boutique
concept.
It's a great concept. And she went out there and she like sourced independent designers, mostly American designers and American workwear. And, like flew out to Indiana to meet this guy. And I'm actually wearing one of his sweatshirts right now. And, she would take the time to really like try a lot of clothes on you and really give her best input, but again, she also was selling you shit. Right. And, I bought a sweater from her and I think about this sweater often when I think about you actually, Tanner. I have this sweater. It's a theory sweater. I'm sure it's beautiful on some people, but it doesn't fit me right. It never looked right on me. It was $250. It's a beautiful piece of clothing. And I've only worn it one time. And it just smells like such a waste of money to me. Right. And so when I think about you and the services that you offer, I think to myself, well, man, if I would have just spent that $250 on getting expert advice or going through a course to learn about myself and me and what I want to say and what I want to look like and what my body type is like and what's going to fit me, that would have saved me so much money. Like probably thousands of dollars. I mean, my closet is filled with stuff. I mean, I only wear 10% of what I got, right?
Yep.
And is that common? I mean,
super common. Yeah. In fact, most of the time when I'm starting with clients, the first thing we do is kind of a closet valuation and we do a purge. And I would say 80% of the time I say, I need you to take photos of everything that you have. And they say, well, I only wear like 15% of the stuff, 10% of the stuff that's in there. So can we just work with those photos? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to show the sort of haphazard nature that we go about acquiring our clothing. And I think it becomes really important, especially when you're relatively matured and you're not growing as much and, maybe your waist grows and shrinks a little bit, but, you can take the time to buy a piece that's going to last you a long time, right? Like I wore a jacket this morning that I've had for like 8 years or something.
Yes.
And it's a classic cut. It's a classic piece. It's never going to go out of fashion. And if you take good care of it, it's actually net financial positive in the long run.
Right. Yeah, your cost per wear is super low on something like that.
Right. And I think that's, among all the other value that people can get from you, I think that's something that really stands out to me.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite things to do with these guys is to help them kind of see the light on that. And whether that's the guys who work with me one-on-one or the guys who go through the course that you've gone through, is it's helping them realize that, okay, now I'm equipped to actually go into this with a game plan. And I have the tools to filter the things that I do look at so that I don't just randomly and kind of in a reactionary way, go out and buy stuff and think, okay, I like that shirt, I'm going to buy that. And then you get home and you go, well, crap, I don't have anything else I can wear this with because I didn't buy the pants and the shoes that worked with that. And everything is just kind of random and sporadic. Whereas if you know yourself, you know your tribes, you know what you're trying to signal well enough, and you know how to filter for all of that, then when you go out, you can go, I like that. I can't really come up with a way that I would wear that, so I'm probably going to skip it
Right.
or go the other direction. And so it does, it saves so much energy. It saves so much inner kind of frustration, especially whether that's when you're shopping or when you've got this kind of nagging feeling of it's like, I should look better. Everybody else around me looks better and I don't look that great. It saves money. The amount of what I do for men. And that's one of the hardest things, again, for me with my marketing is helping guys recognize not only is this a problem, but it's a bigger problem that you think it is. And it's not often
Right.
until guys come out of the back end that they go, holy crap, this
Yeah.
is way bigger than I ever expected it to be.
Way bigger. Yeah, it's going to impact your life on so many different levels.
Mhm.
It impacts your first impressions that you make on people. It impacts the type of people that are interested in talking to you. It impacts your relationships. It impacts your dating and mating opportunities. It impacts your business relationships. It impacts the service that you get at the restaurant that you go
Mhm.
to. Then it's also going to impact your wallet. It's going to save you money, and then it creates this like virtuous feedback cycle.
Yep.
Right. Yep. Where
Exactly.
everything is going really well, and then things just keep elevating.
Yep.
And I can just totally remember times where, and seemingly it goes hand in hand with like how well I'm maintaining my fitness at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Where I just know when I go out in public and it's just popping, right?
Mhm.
And like I do have some sort of statement pieces, but mostly I'm just going for like clean classic, updated classics. And I can just tell when it's popping because people are just more polite. I mean, it may be fucked up in this world of people talking about privilege and this and that, but this is a privilege that you can create for yourself.
Exactly.
People like to interact with people that look good.
Yeah.
And they
I
give you
mean,
better service.
that's the most fundamental. My wife and I were talking about that the other day because she went to a baby shower, and my youngest daughter, who's 2, she's like most 2-year-old girls. She's very shy around people that she doesn't know. She's a total bundle of energy around people that she does. So they go to
Right.
this baby shower for my sister-in-law, and she's surrounded by all these gorgeous women in pretty clothes in this nice, well-designed home and everything. And she just opened up right away. And you find that even on
Aw.
this very small level, we interact better with people that are attractive. And again, whether that's
Right.
fair or not is irrelevant because
Right.
you can't do much about your face, but you can control your fitness and you can control your grooming and your style and those other things. And so you can make yourself more attractive and therefore improve the way you interact with other people and improve the way that you perceive yourself. Because not only do you like other people who are more attractive, you like yourself more when you're more attractive.
Right. And your head is held higher, your eyes
Mhm.
are more open, you're making eye contact more often.
Yep.
Like a world of new opportunities just opens up to you because you're not closed off to the world. You're
Yep.
open to the world.
Yep.
Because you feel confident and secure. But speaking of fitness, you know, you're a pretty fit guy. What's that shirt you're wearing right now? What's it say?
So this is I literally was at the gym before we came. This is Fact and Boxing. So that's the name of the gym that I go to, and I've been doing
Fact and
some
boxing.
boxing.
No, wait, no. Tell me about that. You've been boxing? No, for real. Tell me.
Yeah, so I had my first amateur bout. It was about a month ago.
You're not just like doing the get fit without getting hit thing. You're not doing that.
No. My gym is an awesome, legit fight gym. I've been going for about 2 years, and I realized that one of the things that makes me uncomfortable, especially because I never got in a fight in high school or anything else like that. And for me as a dad, I mean, the whole reason I even started going is I don't want the real rep of anything related to violence to be my first rep. And I had no familiarity with violence whatsoever. Now, does that mean that because I've been doing boxing that all of a sudden I'm like some master defender of my family? Absolutely not. But I'm better prepared than I was before I started doing it. And I can keep making incremental steps so that I become better with it. I also think one of the other side benefits was not anything that I ever expected because I've been in the gym for a few years, even before I started boxing, but what it does for my body language, what it does for my posture, what it does for my level of confidence and comfort around other people. Because, I've played some games with my friends where we're out in public and it's just like, okay, who in this restaurant do you think could actually beat you up? And now it's not that many people anymore because as the standard continues to go down, if you put in any sort of effort, it goes up, and it does a lot for your confidence. But anyway, I realized that just training mitts and doing some like haphazard 20% sparring, it wasn't good enough. And so one of my challenges for myself in 2018 was to take an actual fight, was to have a real fight. So
that's
we did
awesome, man. That's awesome. What was it like getting hit in the face?
Oh my gosh. So when I was doing it sparring, I was surprised by how much it didn't hurt. It felt like getting hit in the head with a basketball.
Yeah.
Like you're just like, oh, that sucks. I certainly don't want that to happen again, but I can keep going.
And what
And that
were
was
you using, like a 16-ounce gloves to spar?
16-ounce gloves to spar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, even with the guys, most of the guys in my gym, so I'm in the 175-pound weight class, and most of the guys in my gym are 220 plus. And so they hit hard.
Damn.
Yeah. But even then, it's still just like, that sucks. I've had one of them like mess up my jaw one time after we were going a little bit harder than we should have been, because that happens. But anyway, you're just like, I can deal with this. And so I go into my bout feeling really confident. And the guy he was younger than I was. He was faster than I was. He had 2 inches on me in height. He probably had 3 inches on me in reach. Like, he was just a better fighter all around. And about 30 seconds in, he comes across with this right cross and just hits me square in between the eyes. And the first thing I thought was, wow, that really, really hurts. Like, way more than anything I experienced sparring or anything that I expected. And it was bad enough that it made me dizzy. And so I was dizzy throughout the duration of the bout. And for amateurs, it's only 3 1-minute rounds, especially when it's like your first fight. And so, I mean, it sucked. I was tired. I couldn't get in any reach. All of my strategies about head movement and pivots, it all went to crap. But man, it was so cool. And so I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again in a few months here. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I too have some ring experience, but my game was Muay Thai.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So I did, I trained Muay Thai for a number of years, and I finally made it onto the fight team, and then finally made it into the ring. And I got 4 fights undefeated, never lost. And I realized, you know what, after sort of in the amateur ranks, like you have the novice levels, and then there's like, I don't remember what they call it after that, but it's like 0 to like 3 fights or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then after that, you have to move up into like the next one.
Right. You're like an open fighter. Yeah.
Yeah. Open. Right. Exactly. So I was like, after I'd won all my novice fights, and the future in front of me, like the guy that won the open in the super heavyweight was like 35-2 or something like that, his record. So I was like, okay, so all right, I've made it sort of like up to like, the 2/3 up the pyramid. I'm like, all right, that's probably good enough for me.
It's a good spot. Yeah.
It was a good spot.
What's so funny about it is that I'm 0-1, and a lot of people, especially because I got the crap kicked out of me. I mean, nobody else that night was nearly as bloody as I was. My face bruising and everything after the guys in the gym were laughing at me there because I got worked. And I'm really glad that I did, because anything after that will be, now I kind of know what, especially because knockouts don't happen very often in novice fights. And so now I know kind of what worst case scenario is. But it's funny because if I had won that one, then it's like, well, I can't stop there, because is this a fluke or can I win more? But if I lose that one, it's like, well, I can't stop there, because you can't go out 0-1. Like, you have to do more than that. Right. And so the fact that you actually found a good stopping point is actually pretty crazy, because I think most of the time there's this balance of like, well, I'm on this winning streak, can I keep it going? Or it's like, oh, I'm so even, I have to shift the balance in my favor. Yeah, there's an interesting psychology with all of those combat sports.
Yeah, well, I was a couple of years older than you when I was doing that, so the writing was on the wall. The guys I was fighting were like, they're 24 years old, and I was never the quickest, and they were a lot quicker. But I want to just emphasize for everybody that, like, one of the number one benefits to participating in an amateur combat sport, and you don't even have to get in the ring for this, is just knowing that you can get hit in the head, hit in the face, and like your whole world isn't going to end.
You are not as fragile as you think you are.
Right. And that's a message. We're sending like the exact opposite message to everybody these days, right?
Have you seen, there was an article the other day about an increase in parents going to have lunch with their kids at school because that's the only way that they'll eat.
Literally just gonna bring that up.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That is terrible parenting. I can't imagine doing that, like enabling that. Well, he's not going to eat if I'm not there. Okay, see what happens if he does that for 3 days. Just do 3 days of a little bit of discomfort and see what happens. Oh my gosh. Oh,
I know, it's crazy. Mind. When like the very rare instances in which like we didn't, like somehow we're out late or we didn't eat dinner. I don't know. It's like, one time a year, right? Where like we don't feed the kids dinner and we're like, oh, whatever, they'll be fine.
Yeah. People
But
are
people
people
forget
are as
that.
resilient as you allow them to be, and they're as
Right.
fragile as you force them to be.
Right. Right.
Yep.
And I think that, the message that we're getting in culture today is that everybody's fragile,
Hmm.
and everybody needs as much, not only do they need as much support as they can get, but they also need every obstacle in front of them cleared out.
Totally removed.
And there's no opportunity to let your children or other people sort of just fall down in the dirt. And combat sports are a way for us to combat, to fight against to fight against, what we experienced in that growing up, which was far less prevalent than it is today, and far less severe. I was a latchkey kid, so like I was like the original sort of free range child.
Uh-huh.
And so I learned some independence very early on when it comes to that. But these days, man, there's none of that. If you're not there when your kids get home from school, you're somehow like a bad person. And if your kids reach an obstacle that they can't surmount on their own, then somehow you failed as a parent, and you've got to do it yourself. And when I saw that article, and of course the picture that they use, speaking of masculine identities and images, right? The picture that they use, like you and I both have beards, but like
Hmm.
it's, I don't feel very, I feel very strong in this in saying that like our beards are masculine and look good and project strength. But like
Hmm.
this dude's, you know what it is. This dude's beard was just bad, it was
Right.
just soft, and he had like a ponytail, and he had like a frumpy shirt and
Yep.
suspenders on, and looked like it was like the epitome of the sort of soy weak man generation. And there he
Right.
was at his kid's school, elementary school, basically like helping his 7-year-old or something
Yeah.
eat lunch,
Eat
because he
lunch.
hadn't well prepared his own son enough to be able to eat lunch on his own.
Ugh, it's failed parenting. It really is. I mean, what you're doing to your kids and what they're going to have, because you cannot have a life free of hardship. It's going to
No.
happen. And so the
Yes.
less you prepare them to be able to handle it, the worse off they're going to be.
Right. And how many kids do you have?
3 with the 4th due in a month.
Oh,
Thanks.
congratulations. And what's the age range on this?
So my oldest is, so we've got 6, 5, 4, 2, or sorry, 6, 4,
Whoa.
2, and then this other one. So we're basically
Oh,
every 2 years.
man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're old school
mine are,
Christians.
well, there you go. Fruitful and multiplying. We have
Exactly.
I have a 6, 12, and 13-year-old, and I think I'm done. I think that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine having them all so close together like that, man. That
It's,
must make
dude,
for,
it's so fun. It's so
yeah.
much fun. And they're so good to each other, and they look out for each other. And I think that's one of the reasons why we keep having more, and we keep going at the pace we do, because not only does the dynamic continue to get better, but we also love and enjoy interacting with each one of them more individually. And so
Right.
for us, it just keeps getting better. Yeah.
Well, that's totally awesome, Tanner. And this has just been a tremendous conversation. And I love sort of tying it all together with the sort of big picture that we're talking about sort of nationally and in society and culture that spurred the creation of the 21 convention, that got us all to go there, that got all these guys to go there. And we've seen out there this like very very forceful and ravenous hunger for mentorship and coaching and guidance and information and community. And it's really
Hmm.
community is what it comes
Hmm.
down to, is like wanting to feel like you're part of something, a group that understands you, and all of the various elements that go into being a self-actualized, auto-regulating, self-optimizing. These are all great terms. Man, today we're on display at the 21 convention, and you had your talk, and guys were loving everything about it. And I just want to just hammer home again sort of like the positive effects that getting your physical presentation can provide to guys. So like in your experience, like what after people, you've worked with people, or they've either, and it's important to point out, like your book is like what, $12 or $15 or something on
Yeah.
Amazon. Yeah. Then there's also like a cheaper version of the course, which is like 40 something dollars. And then, you can do like the custom coaching. So there's like all the different kinds of ways to like engage with your information and your material. But what are like the main positive pieces of feedback that you get from guys that tell you that you're on the right path and that you're doing something good for everybody and that people are growing when they work with you?
So the best way I've had a client tell me kind of what it did for him was he said that it's like he's been driving with his tires only like halfway full his entire
Mm,
life. And then
mm,
by being able to get this dialed in, it finally inflated them all the way. It's not the engine, it's not the steering, it's not this like major component of the vehicle. But if your tires are sluggish, you're not going to be able to optimize and maximize all of those other finely tuned pieces of machinery that go into that being the vehicle that it's supposed to be.
right. And then that translates into happier relationships, better work opportunities, more business success, better friendships, stronger community ties. I mean, I don't feel like I'm overstating this because I've lived all this myself, right?
Exactly.
When I figured out what kind of jeans look good on me and what kind of sweaters, like for example, I don't like sweaters that have elastic bands at the bottoms. And so I've learned that like sweaters that like hang loose on me look way
Hmm.
better. And like
Hmm.
these are just small little things. And then it just doubles into your confidence and your eye contact and your presence. And then all of a sudden you're just sort of like not necessarily a different person, but the person that you were meant to be along the
Yeah, you've
way.
turned up to 11 instead of
Yeah.
being at some lower version of where you were. Yep.
Right.
And then
Right.
people treat you that way, and you're good at being able to take it to level 12 and to level 13 because it's that virtuous cycle that you were talking about earlier, because all that momentum now starts to feed for you instead of against you.
Right. That's awesome, man. I love talking to guys like you guys, family guys, husbands, fathers, businessmen, entrepreneurs. You're a boxer, you're a speaker, you're a coach, you're a teacher, you're a leader. And you're also just totally down to earth and like regular guy all at the same time. And these are the conversations that I love to have because this is not like some forbidden knowledge that only kings and dukes and earls are supposed to have anymore. And we all have access to this now. And God bless the internet for that, and
Right?
and God bless the e-commerce and just the way that we were all able to come together. I mean, you're in Utah, I'm in Washington D.C. We're using this technology to share this information, and thousands of guys and women are gonna listen to this, and hopefully people are gonna take something very positive away from it. And this is just we're living in the future right now, and this sort of movement of people, this self-regulating, auto-optimizing. I mean, those are such great terms
Hmm.
because it's just it really narrows down the essence of we're just trying to get better, right? We're
Yeah.
all just trying to get better.
Well, and thankfully,
Tanner,
I mean, we're in a time where it's optional. And so being surrounded with men who want to take advantage of that option, there's just even more of that community that you were talking about, that brotherhood there.
right? Well, because
Yeah.
we're like it's like a double opt-in email thing. It's like when you do it two times and you
Yes,
like say yes I want in and then you confirm that you want in. I mean, you really want to be in there, and
you're
like
in.
everybody that you come across has got the same sentiment, and it's just it's very uplifting. And I'm not religious, so I don't go to church, so I don't have that community, but I can see how the energy may be comparable in the sense that like we're all after something, we're all after some answers, and we're all eager to be there together, and we're all striving for some sort of improvement and actualization and comfort, in this world that we're living in that can be confusing, terrifying, dark, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
and to find a group of people that are motivated and centered around the same concepts and values is really uplifting.
Yep.
And I think the community aspect has just been something that I really love, and that's also why the little league thing really bummed me out because I sort of
Oh, I
lost
can imagine.
so I lost that
Jeez.
community. But I'm working to build new communities now, and we're doing these meetups. The one in Orlando was obviously way more than a meetup. That was a convention, but we did a meetup in Brooklyn. We did one in Seattle. We're doing one in DC. It's all just about reaching out and making connections like we've made here, man. And
Exactly.
I just want to thank you very much for your time. Thanks very much for sharing your story and for letting people get to know you a little bit better. And talking about, it's not just fashion, man. It's like everything. It's everything about you, and it's about what story you want to tell. And how can people find you, Tanner? Like, what's the best way to engage with your work and engage with you?
So, like a lot of the guys that you are and you have on, Twitter is definitely my biggest medium of choice, and so you guys can follow me there. It's at Tanner Guzy. That's TANNERGUZY. I'm also on Instagram under that handle, and then go check out masculine-style.com. You can go in there and take the archetype quiz, so it'll tell you rugged, refined, or rakish, which one is your primary one, and then I send out a daily email to my guys as well, giving you good insight about why this matters, how this stuff matters, how you can understand the strategies related to style, and how to actually start improving your style game, rather than telling you it's like, well, you got to put on brown shoes, or here's how to go buy the right kind of suit. It's much deeper than that, like I'm sure you guys can glean based on the conversation we've had today.
Yeah, and really, the conversation has been an elevated one that I've really appreciated, and I know there's a couple of things that we still didn't get into, and we can save for another time, like how to tell a story with your
Yeah,
clothes.
we'll
I
just have
think
to do
that
a round two at some point.
Yeah, I think we'll do a round two. So also, we talked. You were offering a special discount on for people if they go to your website and sign up for their courses. What's the code and what's the discount?
Correct. So I have two different courses that we're doing this on. One of them is Dress Like a Man. It's a really good entry level one, and it'll teach you some of the basics and then also give you 35 staples that are really good items that you should have in your wardrobe. And then the other one is my main course. It's called Project Your Power. And so if you want to jump into either one of those, I'll give you a 20% discount. Just use the code Murphy, and yeah, we'll knock that down for you guys.
Awesome. I love those names. Project Your Power. That's awesome.
Awesome.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Tanner, thank you so much, man. I'll let you go. This has been a great time. Hopefully it won't be until next fall that I see you again in Florida, but
Yeah.
we'll definitely do another one of these in a couple months. And good luck to you, man. And I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thanks, Jack. It's been a blast being on. Really good conversation. I'm excited to see not only where this goes, in front of the audio, but even just our growing friendship behind the scenes. So I appreciate you having me on, man.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Bye.